Hello, I'm Nelson Bird. Every 3 years, thousands of Indigenous people from all over the world gather for the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education. It's an opportunity for educators and students to share their knowledge and to find the common thread that binds us all. This year's conference is taking place at Alberta's Stoney Park in the picturesque foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And Indigenous people from as far away as New Zealand are here to take part. The workshops are taking place in the teepees you see behind me. Delegates are spending hours in them learning about each other. Tonight we'll show you what the conference means to the people and see how this year's theme has them looking within themselves for the answers. We'll be right back after these messages. It's a call to learn. Kelvin Ho knows this call well.
This is how we call people. And you'll see the koi koi is another way.
Kelvin's homeland is Hawaii.
We have traditions to share that I think could be very interesting for other people. But being here, with the First Nation people, it's very interesting for us too.
3 years ago, the Indigenous people of Hawaii hosted the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education. This year, Kelvin and other Hawaiians share their culture and knowledge in a much different setting, the foothills of Alberta. Befitting the occasion, the opening is an explosion of color and sound.
We have actually delegates, my understanding is we have delegates from Northern Europe, Alaska. We have delegates from Australia, New Zealand. I believe we have some from Central America, South America, Colombia, so on.
The first Indigenous Educators Conference took place in 1987. In the 15 years since, the number of delegates has grown, but the goals remain the same. Kirby Smith helped organize the Canadian conference. He's a member of the First Nations Adult and Higher Education Consortium.
Well, I think, again, looking at the bigger picture, I think that what we're trying to create is some kind of an awareness of what we're doing, not only as individual nations, but also what we're doing globally as First Nations or as Indigenous nations globally. And I think it's an opportunity for everyone, or as many people as possible, to come together, to share ideas, to let each other know what's going on in their own communities.
Conference organizers could have chosen any large convention center, but in keeping with Indigenous people's connection to nature, they opted for the great outdoors in a more traditional setting.
Our theme is The Answers Lie Within. And so when we were planning the setup of we thought, well, the answers lie within us, and this is an Indigenous conference. Rather than having it in a convention center that could be anywhere in the world, we chose to hold it on an Indigenous territory, and so we decided we were going to use learning lodges. The Indigenous setting, even just having the circle, the circular the circle of the teepee, and a lot of the people sit on the ground to be close to Mother Earth. That's, again, very unusual. And so these are some of the things, this is how we grew up, and traditionally learning from our ancestors and the elders.
Amelia Clark is from Siksika First Nation near Calgary. She spent months organizing the event.
There are an amazing amount of a variety of presentations that are here from all the Indigenous peoples from around the world, and it's amazing how much we have in common.
I think in a very different way. I think almost like in the Indian way, in a sense that it's very much a type of social, almost like a social structure building. Where you have different nations again. Building friendships and building relationships, exchanges in some cases. But I think that what we are achieving is just that, you know, we have an opportunity to just get some exposure for everyone. And I think that the vision itself is to see where we are at and you know, be supportive of each other.
That support is evident in workshops and entertainment. Often the two are woven together. Take this production of Wheel of Justice.
It says Timex made in Japan.
The play sees Christopher Columbus on trial. He faces several charges, including breaking immigration laws. Mike Relland is a Métis from Prince Albert.
I really enjoy the character. You know, I try to make him a lovable scoundrel, I guess, is what I try to do. So, and he, you know, because he's the way he is, he can get away with saying just about anything.
Well, I'm Nina, one of the ships. There's Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And apparently the reason we are just as ladies of the evening is because that's where those names came from.
The performers come from SUNTEP, the Saskatchewan Urban Native Teachers Education Program. Every 3 years, they take a show on the road.
So they created this play in response to the 500-year anniversary of Columbus's arrival on this continent.
I've been at SUNTEP for about 10 years, and the actors change, you know, and I think it does benefit all as the years go by, you know, and it takes a lot of practice and it's a lot of fun.
Humor aside, Wheel of Justice offers a serious underlying message to all Indigenous people.
Well, I think from people from all over the world know more about our history than we do ourselves a lot of times, you know? And I believe it really helps the younger generation, you know, to understand. And even for myself, I used to believe Columbus discovered us, you know? I used to believe that because that's what I was told.
In the end, Wheel of Justice finds Columbus guilty. But it's not the verdict, but the issues raised in the play that resonate with Aboriginal people, regardless of where they are from.
A couple from New Zealand came up after and talked to us, and they were talking about how it's so similar, their history is so similar to ours, and how they make those connections with us, and how they really enjoyed the play and the voices and what they all had to say, because they have the same history as colonized people, and so do the Aborigines from Australia and the Hawaiians and the Maoris. They all have the same history as colonized people, so they really understand a play like this.
And that's what draws these people to Alberta. They're looking at new worlds, their similarities, differences, and the route to strengthening those links. For many, it starts with education. When we return, a bridge to unite Indigenous peoples and their cultures. This is the grade 5 and 6 class at Standing Buffalo School. It's located in the Qu'Appelle Valley and is home to 117 students, most of whom are from the Standing Buffalo First Nation.
I like this school because it's close to my family and my friends. And, you know, here I get to learn my language and my culture.
The school opened less than 10 years ago.
I view, and not only I, but a lot of the community members, our First Nations people, believe that the education of a child is a whole community responsibility. And so we need these schools on reserve. And I believe that the traditional teachings have to become part of the curriculum, a large part, which is what we're attempting to do here.
Standing Buffalo is in sharp contrast to the past experience of so many other First Nations people, uprooted at an earlier age and warehoused in residential schools. Their learning involved books, a rod, and a complete denial of their culture, the legacy of which is well documented. It includes abuse and a people without a spiritual compass. And that experience has been repeated over and over in Indigenous cultures around the world, and is what draws these people to the Stoney First Nation in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. In the not-too-distant past, the world's Indigenous people did not know a lot about each other's culture and experiences. Today, they're finding remarkable similarities and are using them as a guide to the future. Yvonne Hawke is a Maori educator from New Zealand. She worries non-Aboriginal educators lack a connection to the Indigenous children they teach. In New Zealand, she maintains many teachers don't even know students' Aboriginal names.
It's probably in the last 20 or 30 years, a lot of Māori have started or named their children or gave their children Māori names. And one of the things about good teaching and learning is that you know the student. You know who they are, you know their name, you know where they come from, you know their dreams, their aspirations. And one of the first basic steps is being able to pronounce their name correctly. And that's not the case in many New Zealand schools.
Education for the world's Indigenous people is more complicated than the name, however. Te Harangai, Wakarapuru, and Christine Donnelly are from the same part of the world. Te Harangai from New Zealand, Christine from Australia. They are both Aboriginal elders and educators. They believe education, if it is to be effective, must reflect Indigenous people's links to the earth, sky, and spirit.
It's the spiritual side of things, the cultural beliefs. Yeah, it's very similar. Very similar in the way we wish to protect our things, and belonging to the land and belonging to what is around you and being a part of it. And then knowing that you are put here to look after these things.
Spirituality is a fundamental part of education. There has been in the Western systems of education of separating spirituality from education curriculum and the involvement in schools. And so for Indigenous people, including our own people from Aotearoa, that spirituality is fundamental to everything to do with those areas that I mentioned earlier on, including education and law, because there's a separation of spirituality from law.
Kirby Smith of the Pagan First Nation shares that view, but he takes it a step further. He wants First Nations people to control their education, ending a system where the federal government has the final say in what happens in the classroom.
When you're talking about different nations from across Canada coming together, I think that's almost like the common denominator that we have amongst all of us is that, okay, we have this policy that's in place, but what does it mean for people on an individual basis?
Whether it's the venue or the conference format or both, people are talking, and that's how learning begins.
Well, it's a real buzz because it's an opportunity to talk to people from other cultural groups, other areas of education, but I think importantly is meeting with other Indigenous communities and sharing ideas, picking up new ideas, and seeing things in a different way and from a different perspective.
One thing that I do notice is that the experience of whether it's New Zealand or Australia or Polynesian or North American, it's all the same. They come up to you after the performance and they say that's exactly the sort of thing that we've experienced, and so it's kind of affirming in that way. It's amazing the parallels that exist, across time and place.
And it's a wonderful opportunity for our students to network, I guess you could say, with other Indigenous people from all over the world. They're just amazed every time they come at the similarities that exist between Aboriginal peoples around the world. And that's what I find too. And you meet new people every year, and it's just amazing how we're all struggling. We're not, we might not be all at the same place in our struggles, but we're all struggling in terms of decolonizing.
Struggles and politics aside, the conference explores other aspects of Aboriginal education and culture. It's fun and exciting and lightens the mood from the serious dialogue. Traditional games are making a comeback in Aboriginal schools. The object of this game is to throw a small spear into a rolling hoop. The hoops gradually get smaller as the game goes on.
The games of endurance, strength, and speed were part of the customs and the economic success of a clan or a band or a society. The games taught the young people, especially people his age how to hunt. They learn to throw long arrows at hoops to improve their hunting skill.
These delegates are trying their hand at spear throwing. At one time, hand games were a popular form of entertainment in Aboriginal cultures. Players used sticks and stones and other natural objects. Like any game, the goal is winning. Strategy, the key. Deanna Leader heads up this workshop on traditional games. She points out games were once an extremely important aspect of the social structure of Aboriginal people.
They were taught to read facial expressions through the games. They were taught to recognize that one fist is tighter than the other holding the rock. There's a lot of ways that they learn to observe and interpret the world around them.
Traditional food being prepared in a traditional setting is a rare sight. These women are crushing elk meat and berries to make pemmican. A few meters away, women are teaching a medical technician how to skin and scrape a deer hide. Lenny Wesley is from the Stoney Reserve in Alberta. He believes in sharing his culture.
Our cultures are the same from New Zealand and Southern Australia. To keep that tribe together, we've been here thousands of years.
Indigenous Circle returns in a moment. Nature is like a family member in First Nations culture. It's that relative who shows up unexpectedly, bringing great joy or upset. On this evening, the sky over the conference offers a little of both. Earlier in the day, delegates enjoyed the sun and calmness, but then a small tornado touches down on the very spot where teepee poles were laying. In First Nations culture, poles should not be left lying on the ground because bad things can happen. Cultural fact or fiction. No one was injured, 2 teepees were destroyed, and the link between Father Sky, Mother Earth, and the people who inhabit her is renewed. Throughout the week, delegates' ties to the land are tested as shorts and sunscreen give way to winter coats, a typical Canadian week.
Interesting start on Friday. Snow in August, but I think that was actually, a nice experience for our group. I don't get to see weather like that.
The good Lord above has given us a number of days in which we experience the 4 seasons.
But these people aren't deterred by weather. Even piles of bison dung aren't a bother. In fact, for some, the dung and mountain settings trigger memories of days gone by.
The setting is tops because you can see you're close to the trees, you're close to the growth, you're close to the mountains. It's facing you all day and every day that we are here, even to the grass, the drying grass, dung heaps, brings back a lot of memories when we used to milk cows, and walking through dung is good on a cold, frosty morning. And to lie down on the grass now and again and suddenly you find yourself face to face with a piece of dung, this is life. This is life. It has its own fragrance, you see. You have a fragrance here, but, from the bullock or the cow or the bison, there's a fragrance of beautiful meat on the other end, you see. So we never turn our back on a piece of dung and the fragrance that it sends, because we know at the other end there's a nice big steak waiting.
Between workshops, delegates are treated to entertainment from all over the world. Local First Nations also put their best foot forward. The ultimate goal is to reach the young, and it's evident they want to learn.
We have people here, young people, that probably hadn't had exposure to people from other parts of the world. And I think probably elders as well, haven't had a chance to meet with other elders from around and, to share stories and ideas and so on.
It's also a chance for up-and-coming teachers like these SUNTEP students to find purpose and balance that will make their way into the classroom.
Well, they're going to be teachers one day, and hopefully that, has something to do with their how they teach and never to forget who they are. You know, when there's some top teacher going to be teachers, so hopefully that they'll pass it on to the future generations to come.
Amelia Clark feels the energy around her. She wants delegates to leave here with one thing:
a deep appreciation for the variety of Indigenous knowledge that's here and how valuable it is, and how a lot of times we look outside for the answers, but the theme of this conference is the answers lie within, and I think sometimes we need to search deeply to find that, and the answers are there.
When there's a gathering like this, there is such a power. I know some words are overused, like, but empowerment, I guess, is one word that's used so often. But you feel the energy, you feel the spirituality, you feel who you are as an Indigenous person, not only in Canada but around the world. And when you come together with so many other Indigenous people, it strengthens your identity.
And it doesn't matter where the delegates come from: Alberta, Saskatchewan, New Zealand. They all agree it's been a week of learning, of self-discovery and renewal.
To know who you are, you need to know where you come from, and you need to know the stories about the place that you come from.
You can reflect what you are, what you believe you are, and that way they say, hey, look, he's G'd up by us. And so we reflect, and I suppose it's reciprocity of that energy which emanates from them and what is reciprocated from here. And so that's valuable.
Officially, organizers say the conference goals were achieved, ideas were exchanged, and knowledge was shared. Unofficially, much more happened here. The sense of community was strong, and that strength will pay dividends for all First Nation school children whose educational needs for tomorrow must be blended with the culture that has survived for generations. It must, because if recent history has shown us anything, when Indigenous peoples are connected to their past, there is strength, prosperity, and well-being, answers that come not from a textbook, but from within. For Indigenous Circle, I'm Nelson Bird. Thanks for watching and good night.